Alright, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to show you how you can set up your Express server using TypeScript. I know you're all familiar with using JavaScript on your Express and Node.js, but today I'm going to show you how you can use TypeScript on your Node.js application. And for those of you who are not familiar with TypeScript, today, based on this course, I'm going to cover a little about TypeScript and also a little about Node.js. And TypeScript is a programming language that is a superset of JavaScript, and which means all valid JavaScript code works on TypeScript, just with some little extra like type annotation. So while we're in that, let's jump into the terminal. Let's get started. Now, first of all, in order for you to have or use TypeScript on your machine, you gotta ensure that you have Node.js installed, and before you install TypeScript. I already have Node.js on my machine, so for you to check whether Node is installed on your machine, you just type node-v and using the version number. And also, when you install Node.js on your machine, it comes with a Node package manager, which is npm. So also want to check that out as well. So run npm-v and it gives me the version number. And as you can see, it's at the time of doing this video, I'm running on npm version 9.60. Alright, let's get started. I'm going to clear the terminal right now. Now, in this video, this is the first video of my Fullstack course. We're going to build in a Fullstack application for e-writer, whereby so an author or a publisher or a writer can write and publish his books, and also have people being able to view those books. So it's a Fullstack CRUD application. Now, we're going to be using MongoDB on this crash course. But for today, I'm going to show you how to set up TypeScript on your machine then before we get started. So in order to get started on TypeScript, you have to install TypeScript on your machine. Now, if you're running on Mac on Linux, you have to use the sudo command, which is like superadmin. But if you're running Windows, you'll have to open your terminal using an administrator. So currently I'm running on Linux, so I'm going to run sudo npm install, then I'll write -g, which stands for global. So you want to install your TypeScript on a global on your machine. Then type in TypeScript, then hit enter, then type in your password, click okay, then that's going to install. Very good. Now you see my TypeScript has updated, changed one package like I've installed TypeScript before. So now I'm going to create a folder on my machine. Okay, you can see it to my dev folder. Then let's call this TypeScript Node Express. Okay, then I'm going to see it into that folder. Good. Now I'm going to open that on VS Code. Alright. And here's my VS Code. Okay, so I'm going to close this. First of all, I like to create a file app.ts. I'm going to say touch app.ts. Okay, so you can see that we already have the file. Now, before we get started with setting up the server, Express server, I'd just like to run through the basics of TypeScript for those of you who are haven't really familiar with TypeScript. Okay, now let me just show you some little TypeScript here. So let's say we create a variable const, say John, and I want to give it a type of string. Okay, so we'll say John is saying hello. Then also we want to create maybe an array of number lists, and simply because it's an array of numbers. Okay, so we're going to put the square bracket to show that that is an array. Then we can tack it on with the numbers in here. Okay, so this is how TypeScript looks like. So if you want to run this application, you use the TSC, which stands for TypeScript compiler, and you call the file name app.ts and hit enter. So it's going to compile this TypeScript file into app.js, which is a JavaScript file. And now by default it converts to ES5, And of course, there's a way we can set that to convert to ESCs, or you can change the version number of the JavaScript you want. And now you can see we have const here declaring our variable, and here we're having var. So all these are just version numbers. Okay. Now let's mess something up here a little bit. Let's say we want to add a string, and let's call this greetings. And now you can see, now there's something about VS Code. It has a very good linting for TypeScript. If you see, you say string is not assigned arbitrary type number. You see, that's what TypeScript has, of which it's very useful in our workflow. But still, that doesn't mean it's not going to compile. So if I see run the app.tsc app.ts, oops, sorry, app.ts, it's still going to compile, but this time around it's going to compile with some errors. But still, we're still going to be having our app.js showing us the same implementation we've done. So that's one of the advantage of using TypeScript. You can see that it has, you see, const number, one error found. And if you hover your mouse and you say string is not assigned arbitrary number, so you cannot assign string on this particular array. Or if you click on the app.js, you see there's errors are not shown because this is just pure vanilla JavaScript. Okay, so enough with that. Let's set up a config file for TypeScript. Okay, I'm going to delete this app.js file. Let's start setting up our TypeScript configuration. Okay, and now to create a TypeScript configuration, you just from your terminal type in tsc --init, and that will generate a tsconfig file. Now the tsconfig file contains all the configurations and settings you can use for your TypeScript. As you can see, the target is EX 2016. They're just a bunch of stuff you can change here because they are commented, so you can uncomment them. Like we can leave the module for common.js. Then okay, let's just change some few things. Okay, I think we're going to change our module resolution. We're going to uncomment that. We're going to change that to node. Then we're going to change our output directory to, I think we're going to call that dists. I'm going to save that in our dist folder. Then there's one more other thing we're going to do again. That's our source directory. I think I saw that earlier, or rather root directory. Yeah. Okay, and we're going to call that source, because that's where we're going to be storing all our files in there. So I'm going to save that and just close it. Now I'm going to create that folder, the source folder, src. Then I'm going to move this app.ts into that source folder. Okay. Okay, so on the root, now that we have our app.ts in our source folder, on the root, for just typing tsc, it's just going to automatically look at that source folder and build it and create our app.js file for us. Just the same thing. Okay, as you can see, we have our this folder and we have our app.js file and all the bunch of stuff we did earlier. Before, you see it's using straight. So you see now we're using ex6. Previously we had the var for our variable, but now it's using const, so that's strongly ES6. So that's how you can set up TypeScript in your machine. Now let's go ahead and set up our server, our Express server. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of all this stuff, our disk folder. Okay, now clear my console. I'm going to initialize first of all, I'm going to initialize a node application on the root. So I'm going to say npm init -y. The y flag is to say yes for everything. So we're going to have our package.json file created here, as you can see. And now, of course, we have our package.json. We have all the basic configuration we're out for setting up that. Then now I will want us to install some our Express. So say npm I. We're going to install express. Okay, and after that, okay, that's done. Now also we're going to install some dev dependencies. npm I -d. First of all, we're going to install TypeScript. Even though we've installed it globally on our machine, we still have to install it in this project. Then as well, we're going to be installing TS Node. Then we can also install custom types, like maybe string boolean or whatever. But now we're working with Express, we can use a types for Node and also a types Express. Then also want to add NodeMon just for helping us let us restart our server. Okay, NodeMon. Okay, I think that's correct. Okay, then I'm gonna let that run. Alright, here we go. So as you can see, all our dev dependencies are installed here. So let's just go ahead now and start writing setting up our server for Express with TypeScript. Okay, let's just go and generate some scripts. Now we've already done that. I'm going to create a start script. Oops. Start, and that is a script that's going to run our server. So we can say node dist slash app.js, because that's where, when we build our application, that's where it's going to stay. Then also we're going to create another script for running our server using NodeMon. So we can say NodeMon, then src source, and app.ts. Then also I would like to create a script for build. So I'm going to say tsc, tsc -p dot. So what it's going to do actually is going to build our app.ts into this folder, because this is where it's going to run. So when we run our script to start our server, maybe when we deploy, we're going to have our app.js file, and this is going to run on the server. Okay, so that's all for the setup. I'm going to close that. I'm going to open our source folder, go to app.ts. I'm going to take away all this stuff. Okay, then before we start writing our server script, setting up our server configurations, I'll also like us to install another dependencies, are .env. Now .env helps you to being able to import environmental variables file, just in case maybe when you're running on the server you can set up those environmental variables. So that's what .env helps you to do. So to install that, you run npm install .env. So when you install that, okay, that is done. Then also I like to create a new file called .env. Okay, and of course here we could set up a lot of configurations. Here we can add our port. Let's say we're running on 5000. You can also set up maybe your database username, password, server URL, and the rest of them. But for now, let's just start with the port, leave it here like that. Okay, now going to our app.ts file, let's just run the basics for Express. So you start by import express from express. Okay, then you create a variable, say const app equals express. Okay, now this is just the basics for now. I haven't started using types annotation, but nonetheless it's still gonna run. Then also we are gonna import our .env .env from .env. Okay, now for us to use our environmental variables, we can just there are different ways. There's some you can just say .env .config, just call that as a function. It's going to run, so which simply means that all your variables on the environment, all your variables on the environmental file can be accessed using the process.env function. Okay, so now we set up our express. Then also we can say app.listen. First of all, you're going to pass in the port, so we could say okay, let me create a port folder, a port variable for that first. So we can say const port, port equals, now we'll say process dot env dot port. Now we're using the same name we have on our environmental file. Okay, port is an uppercase. Now it doesn't matter the case sensitivity you want to use for that, but it all depends. But I'm using an uppercase. Then you can use a pipe. So in other words, if let's say we're running on port 3000, so what it simply means is that if there are no environmental variables, you can find environmental variables to run on port 3000. Okay, that's what it means. I'll now come here, we'll say app.listen. So we're going to send in the port. We can call this variable port. What's going on? Okay, port. Then we can just log something on the console. You can just say console.log server running on port. Then you can tack in this port variable as well. So you can just say port. Okay, then of course we're going to change this to backticks, so we can be able to do some kind of string interpolations. Okay, now with this, our server is going to run. Notice we're not using any type annotation, so if I say npm run dev, because that was a script we used on our package.json file, if you remember, yeah, npm run dev. So if I run dev, it's going to run the nodemon service and be watching our files for every file change. Okay, now you can see it says server running on port 5000 because of course we have our environmental variable. So in other words, it's picking this value of our environmental variable here. So let's say we don't have an environmental variable, and I remove that and maybe restart the server using the RS from the nodemon. You see it's going to run on port 3000 instead of port 5000. Now you see, now it's running server running on port 3000. So that's what your environmental variable is. And of course, if you open up your browser and you type in, let me just create a new tab. And if you type in localhost 3000, you see it's going to show cannot get. Now this simply because we haven't created any route on that. And if we go back to our source code, and if I go back on my environmental variables and bring it back on bring the port back to 5000. Then I try to run on 3000. You see it's going to give an error, like you cannot find that port. So the port actually has changed, so we can change it back to 5000 because that is the current port the server is running. Oops, hang on. Okay. Oh yeah, sorry, there were no file changes made in that because that was an alien file. So you can see it's running on 5000. Okay, so this will work, but now I like us to start doing some type annotations, and from our .env file, so you can see that our application is accessing the variables from our .env file. So now on this same application, now let's start bringing up our types. So under app, we can call express, use a type called application, and what that actually does is that you have to import application on your express. So you see import express application. You can also import requests and response, and also the next function, and of course, you know, when you're writing middleware functions, of course you have to use the next function. So all these are types in Express that are accessible with the TypeScript application. So here, let's just create a simple route. You can just say app.get / then we can just call it callback function. We can say request and give it a type of request. Then response, give it a type of response. Okay, then we could also have a next function here and give it a type of next function. Okay, then you can use an arrow function, you can use a standard JavaScript function. So let's just say res.send. You can say hello world. Okay, so while our application is compiling at runtime with the help of our Nodejs, so you see there are no errors and everything is working as it's supposed to be. So this is how you use TypeScript when you're setting up your server. So if we go back to our browser and run on localhost 5000, okay, let's ensure that this, okay, now it's compiled. Localhost 5000, see we're gonna get hello, simply because now you see it's accessing the route. Okay, it's accessing the route for that. So that's pretty basic for using TypeScript. Then also, of course, if you're doing for production, there are other ways you can use your .env5 imported. The way I like to do it is that I like to say if process .env node env is not equals production. So should load the environmental variable, and most times I prefer using the env config .env. Yeah. So anyways, either using config.env or .env.parse, either of them still works. All you have to do here is just import it, say config.env, and that will still work. Okay, this is just a module for the .env, so that will still work. And then of course, if we run our server, it's still gonna run on for 5000 and the rest of them. Now what Nodejs does is that this is default environmental variable that runs on the server. So it's going to check if Nodejs is not production, because by default it is on development. So if it's on development, so it should run on this port 3000. In other words, it's not going to bring in the environmental variables. But if it's running on production, which is why we're working on right now, so it's going to bring it in .env variables. Okay, so that's just pretty basic for now. So on the next video, I'm going to show you how you can start setting up your routes, your controllers, and the model, so we can start bringing in our databases and the rest of them. So thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video.